All right, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Salt Security's Founders Corner. Today I've got with me Michael Nicosia, one of our founders. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Michael. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's always good to talk to you, and in particular, a topic that I know is like near and dear to your heart: customers, right? And helping customers and
Mhm.
solving their problems. And you've been doing this for a while, and I wanted to get your perspective on how is the customer problem changed, or the conversations that they're having with people, like maybe from what it was initially, and yeah, how it's evolved.
Yeah, I think it's actually evolved quite a bit, and there's several assumptions that we had at the beginning when we started the company to where it's evolved to. As you noted, like when Roy and I started the company, nobody was talking about API security, nobody knew what was going on, and so on. So we've kind of established ourselves, and our initial thought was, how do we provide immediate impact to APIs that were already in production, right? So, there was a whole bunch of users that were already using those APIs because we thought this new threat vector was happening and it was easier for these bad actors to go into and try to infiltrate these applications that were already in production,
Yeah.
whether it was a mobile app, a web app, microservices, whatever, but things that were in production. So what we thought is we wanted to kind of secure those applications as much as possible. So detecting and preventing any kind of API attacks and vulnerabilities was really what we were, thinking
Yeah.
about solving for. So I think our early instincts were, let's definitely solve the hard problem first.
Yeah. Right.
Make sure we
Right.
have a solution for these CISOs to protect their APIs.
And was there,
Um,
in doing that, I mean, like typically in security, there's different industries that need security more than others. Was there a particular
mhm.
one that like gravitated to this, or maybe a particular couple?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about financial services, they're always kind of
Right.
those early adopters, high tech companies, or any organization that had any kind of mobile app that were in production and they had millions of users. I mean, those were really kind of the two verticals that were kind of pushing the envelope for us initially. Yeah.
Yes. So if they that like you said, that was the hard problem first, that suggests that there's a different problem now, or there was a problem. But like, so what did it move to, or how did it shift?
Yeah, I think as we got to know more and more CISOs, and what we thought about is, and we talked to folks like Mark O'Neill at Gartner, we began to realize that because this was an early market and there wasn't a lot of information about API security, is that there was a lot of uneducated buyers out there, and there was a lot of individuals that really didn't understand, how should we tackle this API security or this kind of new threat vector, this blind spot that they had. And what we realize is that maybe the hard stuff is something that we shouldn't lead with. And maybe it's more, hey, wouldn't it be great if we can discover your API endpoints and provide
Yeah.
you that instant value of being able to see what you don't know, right? So we thought that this whole notion of discovering your API endpoints and then understanding what type of sensitive data may exist in these API endpoints was really kind of the first go at this. So we kind of thought this crawl, walk, run approach would be a
Yeah.
little bit more appropriate.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, a lot of organizations are just in the initial stages of API security and some of the projects associated with that. So we thought, okay, you discover, which is your crawl. And as you're discovering, we're also adding posture governance associated with that. And then obviously being able to walk. And then running is really being able to do the threat detection
Yeah. Got it.
that we're so good at.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you paint that, because it seems like in just about anything, and security is a good example, but just about anything, you don't just go from 0 to 100, right? You always go through some kind of journey, and some people
Right.
go through that journey faster than others, or not, but most people go through some kind of journey. I like that, or the journey. I like the crawl, walk, run kind of metaphor on it. The first step, the discovery piece, it's kind of obvious, right? You have to discover what you
Mhm.
have. But that middle piece on posture, so maybe talk a little bit about what does that mean? What is it that the problem that customers have around posture, and what you should do about it?
Yeah, what we've thought about is that nobody has like a scorecard for their APIs, right? And a lot of CISOs didn't really know what good looked like. So that's really what posture governance was all about, is to provide these CISOs and these organizations a scorecard to understand what great looked like and being able to achieve those standards. And what we decided is not only that, but really we created a policy hub that really were built in kind of capabilities of defining what good look like per specific verticals. Like financial services might be different than healthcare, which might be different than retailers, which might be
Yeah.
different from transportation, whatever, right? So that's what we created. So we've got this really robust engine and
Right.
policy hub that allows you to create these scorecards and these APIs that form into what great looks like
Yeah.
for your specific
So
vertical and
what you're
industry.
doing, you're making it so people could create it on their own, right? They could just go out and create their own policies. And
Right.
I think what you're saying is like, if why reinvent the wheel every time if some of these exist and they're pretty standard, typical across industry, just use them, right? And
Exactly.
so instead of rewriting it, just click on it.
Right.
It sounds like and tell me if this is a good analogy on this. It almost sounds like an app store, right? Where you
Right.
go, and in this case, the apps are policies, and you may grab the policies from the policy hub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It is like an app store, because what we've learned is that there's a lot of, again, because it's a new industry, we want to provide, because we've got kind of the expertise behind API security and what it's supposed to look like.
Right.
So we thought we would build these app stores so that you can easily get up running
Yeah.
specifically for you. Specifically, if you don't have expertise within your organization to be able to do that. However, if you do, then you can create your own, which might be a little bit different than what we provide for you, but it's very, very easy to do.
Well, I love that, and I think that that last thing you said is really important, is that ease of use, right? I mean, that is security is inherently complicated, and the easier we can make it and more and abstract all of that complication, like almost like going to an app store, but in this case, you go into a policy and say, "Oh, I want that one." If you can make that easy, man, it makes everybody's job so much easier, and ultimately, they're able to reduce their risk in their business. Yeah.
Yeah. And when we look at, I mean, just real quickly, is not only we decided to try to make everything as easy as possible, because what are we trying to do? We're trying to create value as quickly as possible
Yeah.
for CISOs and the organizations that buy us. So that's kind of the intent of why we might make it easy for you to be able to deploy.
Love that. That's really good. Let me maybe kind of start to close off on this, but go back to what you started with initially, which was the threat protection. And you said you solved the hard problem first. I imagine you learned some things along the way, but I also imagine that it's what you built is different than maybe other solutions or other MLs, or everybody seems to be AI washing things, right? And hard to decipher what is, but what is it about salts that's a little bit different?
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of things. I mean, from an architectural perspective, and I won't go into detail, I mean, that's one. But the other reality is that a lot of our competitors or a lot of software organizations talk about leveraging ML. And the reality is that they're more rules-based and they're not really leveraging ML and big data like we are. So, I mean, if you think about how we created, and we've got patent associated with our ML technology to be able to detect and prevent API vulnerabilities, we truly leverage our ML and big data. So if you think about kind of our approach, it's a learning engine. So we're looking at billions and billions of API calls, and we're constantly learning to create that baseline. So any deviation from that baseline will provide that capability of you to be notified. And if you think about all these calls, we get a really good understanding of the intent of what's really happening within the API calls that are happening. So where other solutions kind of give you a canvas and it's a blank canvas, and they basically say, look, because we don't have any understanding or any knowledge of API security, and because our engine is rule-based, which is no better than a WAF solution, we're giving you a blank canvas, and you basically, and here's some coloring or paintbrushes, go ahead and do your threat protection. Where our approach was, because we've got so much sophistication and so much knowledge in threat protection, is that we basically have created all of this. So you don't really need to do much, except we've kind of already given you the drawing, and all you have to do is kind of do these little traces. So
I like that. I like
Yeah.
so it's I suppose every once in a while you will give tools to someone and it turns out that that person is a Michelangelo. But it's not very common, right? So if you want to take that path and risk it, it's okay. But what we've tried to build here is let's give you some more intelligence, some more insight into what's going on so
Right.
that you can more readily focus, your efforts on where it's going to be give you the biggest return.
Exactly. Because the industry, from a security perspective, false positives,
Yeah.
it eliminates all of the false positives that you might have. And if you think about when you're looking at billions and even trillions of API calls, you definitely don't want to have a lot of false
Yeah.
positives because
Right.
imagine the operational outlook of managing a solution like that. It would be
Oh
disastrous.
yeah. Well, and I think you had mentioned to me at one point as well, a lot of the API attacks, I mean, some are just dumb attacks, but many are very sophisticated and
Mhm.
they happen over time. And so the amount of data or metadata that you keep to analyze gives you the ability to make those intent connections. Something may have happened 2 months ago and it happened again a month
Mhm.
ago and then maybe yesterday. But if you don't have all of that data to analyze and say, hey, there's something going on here, you're going to miss it, right? Because you're going to be looking through, through a keyhole and you're not going to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point, Michael, is that one of our key differentiators is being able to analyze that data over time and not just the periods of seconds or minutes like our
Right.
competitors, but over weeks and months. Because if you have your attackers hat on, you would know that attackers just don't attack you for a quick second, it's
Right.
over time. So the slow and low capabilities of us understanding those APIs and any deviation associated with that is really, really important, especially when it comes to threat protection
Yeah.
and being able to really understand what is really happening with those APIs and any potential attacks that might be happening.
Yeah, it's really good, and I like the way that you've explained this in terms of this journey, the crawl, walk, and run journey from discovery to posture to threat protection. Thank you for spending the time with us today, and for everyone listening, we do this every 2 weeks, so please check back in 2 weeks, and we'll do another episode of Salt Security's Founders Corner. Thank you, everyone.